Hmm. I love this poem, in part because it speaks to two of the most powerful spiritual postures for me: surrender and trust. And it's all about relationship, the way we're in relationship with one another and hold one another, the way we've been held by one another. But the thing that I love too about this poem, about most poems, if they're good poems, is that they don't mean just one thing. In fact, they're an invitation to read your own life into the poem. And so poems shift, not in their words, but in their resonances. And I hope you experience that with this poem as well. Can we go to the next slide? Can we go back to the poem? I want to read it one more time with you. We can't go back?
It's not up there.
Oh, there's no poem up there. Oh. Give me one moment. That's what happens when I look this way and you all look that way. Lie back, daughter. Let your head be tipped back into the cup of my hand. Gently, and I will hold you. Spread your arms wide, lie out on the stream and look high at the gulls. A dead man's float is face down. You will dive and swim soon enough where this tide water ebbs to the sea. Daughter, believe me when you tire on the long thrash to your island. Lie up and survive. As you float now, where I held you and let you go, remember when fear cramps your heart what I told you. Lie gently and wide to the light-year stars. Lie back and the sea will hold you. So this is a story where the narrator has a relationship of care and love and mentoring to the child in his, her, or their hands. And it's one where the speaker is departing a lesson, how to lie back and be held by the waters, and a reminder that a dead man's float is the opposite way. So a reminder to look up at the wide open sky, at the stars up above, and that the speaker says you will have a long thrash to your island, you will dive deep and swim. There will be a time of energy and struggle, a long thrash. But when you tire, lie back and float, and the waters will hold you. It's a story of recognition of what life is like, struggles, but being held when you tire. I think about the ancestral lessons that we've received, both as a faith community, what has held us in times. And there's kind of two lessons that come to mind right now. Unitarian Universalism is a little bit in a growing pain spot. And we're growing to move towards a more multicultural community, to shift how we do things and what wisdom sources we draw from, to think about how our decision-making goes. And a lot of these changing currents fall within our proposed move from the principles to the new Article 2 value system. It's a lot of current changes in there. And there are two things that, as a wider community of Unitarian Universalists nationally, some of us are struggling with this, others of us are excited by it, and yet we're all in it together. There are two ancestral lessons that come to me. One is from William Ellery Channing, who said, "Do we know who people are? Like, who are people?" And he said, "Every person is born with a spark of the divine. It's in our bodies. We are holy beings, in other words, so different to think about looking at each other as holy beings versus as sinful beings." That's one. And he said, and let's look at the blessings of that. What have we been given in our bodies? Brains that think, hearts that feel, bodies that are capable. And so I'm reminded at times like this, when we disagree, that it's possible to hold each other in care, to view one another as wonderfully made, and to be discerning, thoughtful, right? Not to merely accept, go, oh, this is what was just told to me and I'll do it. Not that. And nor just to react without any thought, but to really bring all of our capacity to perceive the best and wisest way forward. Channing's advice, or reminder, or blessing has helped us go through currents in the past. And the second one is Theodore Parker. Theodore Parker was many things, including a more radical abolitionist and a wonderful theologian. He was the one who actually first articulated the phrase, "the arc of justice is long, but it bends towards justice," as well as that we should be a country of, by, and for the people. He was paraphrased from a lot. And he began to articulate understanding of Christianity that was uncomfortable to many of his Unitarian ministerial colleagues. He said, there is a truth in Christianity, in the example of Jesus, that is so true, it doesn't even matter if Jesus never existed. If there was no historical precedent, if there was no person named Jesus, the ideas of love thy neighbor, welcome in the stranger, care for the foreigner, respect women's leadership, all of that would be true regardless what happened 2,000 years ago. And his colleagues thought, this is going to get us in trouble. And his colleagues faced a moment, and they said, we have a tradition that says we will open our pulpit to one another, and we will invite each other into collegial community with no litmus test of belief. And they wrestled because they thought, oh my God, we're getting in trouble every time we invite them in. And they decided to stay in relationship. They decided to include him anyway. And there is something about that, a willingness to stay in relationship with people you disagree with, stay in relationship even when it's hard, stay in relationship that has led us to be more pluralistic and welcoming of everyone who comes in with doubts or different beliefs, and learn how to live with and for one another. And I think our faith could use those reminders now to learn how to navigate and float during this time of change. And this poem is so much more personal than that, isn't it? I don't know about you, but I can't hear this poem and not think about a parent and the lessons we've got from them. Is that true for you? I think about one time with my mother. I couldn't figure out at first why I kept thinking about this moment with my mother, and I realized it's in preparation for this. So my mother and I grew up poor, or I was poor when I was growing up with her, and we would go on these trips. And one of the things that I learned about from my mother is, if you're a person of more limited means and you want to do something, whether it's go to a school or a college or on a weekend trip, and you want to make sure that you have all the resources to pull that off, you're never going to go anywhere or get in anywhere. You got to take a leap of faith. And so it just so happened we were in central Massachusetts for some reason I cannot remember. I don't know where we were. And our trip was over, and we were catching a Greyhound bus back. And we were waiting for this bus, and we were waiting for this bus. And after about 4 hours, when it was around 11 p.m., we basically knew the bus wasn't coming. And someone had come to confirm it. And there were some other people who had been waiting for the bus with us too, and most of them had left. And the thing I knew during all those hours were we had no money to pay for a place to stay. None. And I thought, I have no idea what we're going to do. And I also know my mom has a way of finding a way out of no way. And this one other woman who was there, I could tell my mother was different with her than she normally was. My mother generally was deeply traumatized and had some mental illness and some other things, and she was fiercely authentic. And yet, with this one woman, the best words that I have are, she code switched. She began to talk about how she went to Barnard and, what a lovely time we had in New England and all these things. And this woman knew someone at Barnard, and it turns out this woman knew my mother's roommate, and my mom was charming and nice and all these things. And I thought, I've never seen my mother like this in her life. And I thought, I think my mother is deeply taking care of me during this time. And sure enough, after about 4 hours, this woman looked at my mother, who I don't think had entirely fooled her, and looked at me and said, "Would you like to stay at our house tonight?" My mother taught me this lesson that has saved me over and over again, which is when I have reached my capacity of caring for myself, there is a kindness in the world that will hold me. There's a kindness in this world that will hold me through those times of desolation. But this poem isn't just about being held, though I was grateful for that reminder. It's also about the children we hold in our hands. So a lot of this week I've been thinking about the children we hold in each other's hands. And being my husband, Kent, will remind me of and sometimes accuse me of, I'm very literal. And I remember this time, I was in 11th grade, and there was this amazing freshman on our track team, so fast, breaking all the records. And And maybe it's because we ran together and that formed some kind of community. Or maybe it's because I had been a captain of cross country and was used to welcoming people. But she found me this one day at school. And she was so upset. And she just came and hugged me. And she began to weep. And my body came to the floor, and I held her in my arms. And she shared that one of her friends from her neighborhood she had seen shot in front of her. And the loss of life and her need to process. And do you know what it partially was, I imagine? To go from that grief and trauma into our school day where people are thinking about their test, or if they did well on their history project, or who was dating who, or if they could get off campus for lunch. And I think it was just that cognitive distance was so breaking for her. And to have someone who would just hold her, just hold her. You know, it's sometimes the person you need to hold, you don't even know that well. Last summer, I went to Woodside Gardens to visit that community and learn about the summer program. In part, we financially supported and sustained it. And these girls came forward, and one in particular just hugged me for about 35 minutes. And she talked about how her father was shot and died. You know, sometimes you just need to be held by a grown-up when you haven't been held by one in too long. You need to feel a heartbeat and a body warmth, and like someone doesn't want to let you go. I think about in 2017, then, as is too often the case now, we're facing a border crisis. And you might remember there was that big concern around children being separated from their parents. And I went down to one of the tent cities in Texas where children were being held in these camps. And I went as part of an interfaith action. And they would they bring these children in by busloads. And often they would paper up the windows so that way no one could see how many kids were being carried in. But this one bus went by when we were there, and every time a bus went by, we quieted down and we stood to be a witness, and we saw these faces go by. And this one girl just put her hand up to the window like this, and we all raised our hands like this, just trying to reach each other, just trying to say we were there. She was seen. We were witnessing the struggles. More than one thing happened, right? More than just that vigil happened at the border, but it was closed on Christmas Day, just a few weeks later. Who have we held? We hold each other here. Didn't we hold each other in prayer in our joys and sorrows not that long ago, earlier this service? Don't we feel more connected and capable when we share of our lives? We hold each other when we have our memorial services, and we hold each other in that nervous excitement when someone from our community gets married. We hold each other through disagreements when we're not sure of the way forward in our community. I think and remember and sometimes literally feel in my body all those folk who in one way or another I have held. And when I think of those people who have held me, I have but one word to describe them: beloveds. My dear beloveds. So I invite us to remember, my dear ones, that some of our most sacred work is to remember the ways that we have been held, to remember the lessons that we have been given and how they help sustain us and float us, and to hold each other, not just each other in this community, but to think about how we could hold each other more broadly in a circle of care. May it be so, and blessed be.